What if I told you that natural dyes aren't safer than synthetic dyes? They're just different. Okay. And
Yeah.
hopefully you're like, well, duh, Captain Obvious. But I don't think people realize this. Okay. And what I'm talking about is the increase in allergy risks. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let's go ahead and break down the whole red 40, or people say they have reactions to
Yeah.
it. Okay. A lot of times you hear moms saying that their children turn into feral beasts when they eat anything with red 40 in it. The problem with that, and I'm not saying that your child does not turn into a feral dingbat just because you gave them a red cupcake. Okay, I'm not saying that. It's very possible if I feed my children red cupcakes, they will probably turn into crazy beasts. But there are lots of studies about red 40 where the amount of people that had a reaction to it was minimal. And people are always saying how red 40 causes those that have ADHD or even possibly autism, that it like increases their symptoms or their outwardness of it.
Right.
But I would caution you to look at what your child is eating. So think with, pure logic here. Your kid is eating a super sugar laden cupcake that happens to be red. Okay. Is it the dye that's causing the reaction? Or is it the fact that it's a whole bunch of sugar all at once? You know what I mean? And a lot of things that have red 40 in them are your baked goods, they're candies, they're ice creams, they're, soft drinks, all things that are very, very high in sugar. And a lot of these tests that these studies that people quote, when they do the studies, they're giving them food that is high in sugar and the dyes. So how can you separate that the reaction was from an intense amount of sugar versus the red dyes? And if you're feeding your kid, what is it? Is it the Unreal candy that is like the dupe of M's?
Yeah.
You're still feeding your kid a crap ton of sugar. Of course, they're still going to while out, Now, there are some people that truly do have a sensitivity to red 40, but it hasn't been so wildly confirmed with studies. Most of it is just what you would say, not stories, but it's experiences that can't be replicated in a scientific study. Okay, it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. It just means we haven't been able to replicate it yet. Okay, but you know what we have been able to replicate? That common natural food colorings. Okay, we're talking annatto, beet extract, turmeric, carmine, spirulina. They are all known, tested, and shown to offer allergy risks to anyone that's allergic to them. Okay, some dyes are derived directly from insects or algae. Well, now that's problematic for those that are vegans, vegetarians,
Yeah.
and people who have mold or seafood allergies. Okay. And just because something is labeled as natural doesn't mean it's allergen free or that it's risk free. Okay. Right. So, in the grand scheme of things, switching over to natural dyes to solve a health problem is really going to cause a health problem for a good amount of people. Okay. I want you to think, how many people do you know who are vegan or vegetarian? How many people do you know that are allergic to mold or seafood? Okay. And that doesn't even count the individual food allergies. I happen to know people that are allergic to strawberries, mangoes, pineapple. All of those would be considered natural foods that could be used to color something. Okay. So if everything in your supermarket is all natural colorings, you have a higher instance of being an allergy risk to part of the population than you do with those synthetic dyes. Okay. That's kind of mind blowing to me, that we're going to solve a health problem and we're going to create major health problems for a ton of people. Because if you're vegan, you're vegetarian, you're allergic to mold or seafood, what do? You just can't ever eat certain products because how they're colored, you're allergic to it?
Right.
That's bizarre.
I feel like, so I understand that there may be some reactivity to dyes. And I think there's dyes and things that aren't necessarily like based in
Right.
sugar.
Right.
So let's take into account that, yeah, maybe there are some people who have reactivity to dyes. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say that while those people have issues with synthetic dyes, the people who have sensitivities to large swaths of food are higher and going to be more difficult to accommodate, because I don't necessarily know, because then we would start to look at things like proprietary information, right? So
Because there's
what,
lots of food labels right now that just say natural colors.
right?
So it's going to be difficult if they can get away with now just putting natural colors and not explaining what's in those colors.
Yeah,
And I know some people that have allergies to those. And so if it says natural colors, they still won't touch it just for
right.
fear that it might include something they're allergic to.
Yeah,
Now, the FDA only says, I think it's 10 items that are on the most high allergen list
yeah.
that
It
have
used to
to
be
be
8, now it's
declared.
10.
So as long as you're allergic to something outside of those top 10, it may or may not declare that as an allergen.
Yeah, so I've had one allergic reaction in my life, and it was fairly spectacular, according to the doctor, because typically allergic reactions build over time and increase from like
Exposure.
mild
Yeah.
reactions. Yeah. And the only time that I've really kind of know that I've had a legit reaction, I went to the ER because like my throat felt itchy and my face was red, my whole body was red, I was itchy all over, and I had the only thing I can attribute to it was these nuts, and they were pizza seasoned. And the seasoning on the pack just says pizza seasoning. But
Doesn't explain what's in it.
I've had pizza my entire life. I've eaten Italian food. I've made Italian food. I've used tons and tons and tons of different seasonings.
So you still don't know
Literally.
what caused the allergy.
No, not a clue. To a point where I did a teledoc visit because I was like, all right, maybe I'm not crazy. And she's like, how long ago was that? And I was like, 30 minutes. She's like, that's a she's like, you've never had a reaction like this before? I was like, no. She's like, she called it spectacular. So like, I still have the picture on my phone. It is not a look I want to replicate, but I have no idea what was in it.
All right. So when I was in culinary school, we were cutting fruit, okay? And this lady, and she was much older than I was, okay? She says, "Man, I hate it. Every time that I cut pineapple, my fingers feel a little numb." And I was like,
That's
"What?
not normal.
Like that's not normal." And
Right.
then she says, "Yeah, it's really cool. Every time I eat it, my lips get all tingly and sometimes numb." And I'm like, "Dude,
Damn.
you are allergic to pineapple." And that
Okay.
thought never occurred to her. And she was easily in her 30s, okay?
That's
So
crazy.
there are tons of people out there that are allergic to things and they don't even recognize that they're allergic, okay?
Right.
So let's, for instance, say that you 100% confirmed you are allergic to red 40.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the great news is there are tons of dye-free options and dupes out there.
Yeah.
So you can avoid it if you want to and just go with a natural item or naturally colored item.
Right.
Now, once we ban all synthetic food dyes, they're gone, never coming back. If you are allergic to things like annatto, beet extract, turmeric, carmine, mold or seafood, you are just up shit creek because there are no alternatives to natural food dyes.
Now we've entered a whole nother phase, because now we're talking about changing labeling because we have to maintain the safety of the food that's within our system, right? So when you start adding allergens into things and you're increasing the exposure for more people who wouldn't have had this thought previously, like when you look at something, I don't know, something random like Cheerios. Right? I'd have to look. Does Cheerios have dye in it? I don't know. I'm gonna give it a
I don't think
quiet
they do.
little.
I think they've removed it all from Cheerios. But
Okay.
if you said like Apple Jacks has food dye in it.
It does. I was trying to think of something that was fairly innocuous that like you wouldn't have necessarily thought had food coloring in it, but
Probably
maybe,
anything chocolate flavored.
yeah, that makes
Almost
sense.
everything that is chocolate flavored that's not a chocolate bar has food coloring in it to make it brown.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, so we'll say something that you wouldn't have suspected had food coloring in it, but it's been a synthetic color, so there's been no reaction thus far. Unless we're talking about like clarifying what or creating a really static system of what colors can comprise of. You know what I mean? Like, but then that kind of takes, we've got a lot of experimentation to get ahead of us on that one. So,
I've got
it,
two quick points here that I just thought of because you said something very profound, and I don't even think you know you said it. Okay? Not that you aren't full of profound moments, but okay. You said experimenting. Okay?
yeah,
So RFK Jr. is trying to close a loophole that allows companies to submit scientific evidence that additives that they put in their food is generally regarded as safe. Okay? He
yeah,
wants to slash that. He wants the FDA to test it first and make that recommendation rather than companies make it on their own. We've
right,
already discussed the current supply of natural food dyes is not enough. So all these companies are going to be scrambling and experimenting trying to find new colors, okay?
right,
Because how do you set yourself apart from this bland, sad cereal landscape? You find a new color that nobody else is using.
yeah,
So now, once again, you're going to be introducing new additives into the food system that have not been fully tested, that don't have longevity. Because whether you like it or not, synthetic food dyes are highly regulated.
yeah,
Okay? They have been tested so many ways and they have been studied for years. And that can't be said for all food, like natural food colors.
right.
Okay? And then here's my this was the profound moment. Okay? How many class action lawsuits have we looked at over the term all natural?
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
There is no FDA regulation or definition all natural.
Yeah.
So, what is going to make a natural food color?
For
Okay?
an unregulated term. Wow.
For an
That's the wild, wild
unregulated
west.
term.
That is the wild, wild west.
Yes. So now the buzzword right now is petroleum based. Okay. I
Mm,
don't think anybody had ever heard petroleum based food dye up until 2 weeks ago when it become viral on all the social medias and all the influencers.
right.
Okay. But here's the thing, because one guy actually said, if you want petroleum based food dyes in your food, put it in at home, chug some gasoline with with your cereal. Well, first off, moron, there is no gasoline in petroleum based anything.
It's for
If he
paper.
had even half a brain, he would know petroleum is an organic substance that comes from dead marine life, okay? That died hundreds and thousands of years ago. And it is compacted. And then we bring it up from the earth, and now it is full of hydrocarbons. So anything that you make that is based off of carbon
Mm.
comes from a hydrocarbon. You see what I mean? Like, you got to learn some chemistry here. Okay. This is like where they say, oh, that's one molecule away from paint thinner. Well, you know what? There's 7 million things that are one molecule away from paint thinner. Doesn't mean that it's bad for
It
you.
doesn't make it paint thinner. Like just
No,
because the chemical makeup is
is similar. Okay.
doesn't necessarily mean that it's toxic or yeah, yeah, yeah. Like
That's like saying
so
you're one variation of DNA away from me. Well, that's not the same thing. Okay? So my issue here,
yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
If we cannot as a government determine what is natural, how can we now require no more synthetic food dyes and only natural ones? I see a gazillion court cases now because of natural colorings, okay?
Yeah.
Because what is a natural color source?
Mm. I mean,
Let us
it's
know down below. What do you think about now the much bigger increase in food allergy risks? How about all the vegans and vegetarians out there who may still want to eat food after this ban? And oh, hey, what the heck does natural mean? And what is a natural food color? Let us know your thoughts down below.